Ya'ate, hello. Welcome to Real Native Roots, Untold Stories, a podcast by a Native woman with deep roots, hosted by yours truly, Vickie Oldman. I am a lover of stories, a connector, and a holder of wisdom keepers. Each month, we will be connecting with our Native relatives and exploring what medicine our guests share and offer to us. Please join me on this uncharted journey to learn, connect, and reflect. Ayahat. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Whew. I hope you all are well, and hopefully you all are taking care of yourself. There's a lot of unforeseen, unknown, and I'm just going to name it craziness that's happening in our world right now. It's overwhelming, and I'm trying my hardest not to be consumed with the news and really just trying to do what I need to do. And like today, I'm just excited that I'm doing a podcast and not being inundated by hearing what other craziness is happening in terms of policies and whatnot. I don't know if that's a learning. I guess the learning is I'm really trying to not be inundated with external news and information, even though I'm trying to be informed. It's hard to be informed and not let it get like the best of you. So that's where I'm at right now. I have a poem. As you all know who my favorite writer is Richard Wagamese. And this is the poem that I'm going to read. And the way he does these, he does them like each chapter has a theme. And so this chapter, the theme is called There Are No Strangers. I don't think it's the name of the poem, but it's the opening of this chapter that I'm going to read. So it starts like this. Creator does not tell us who to love, only that we learn how. Love is spiritual. It comes from the spirit place. There's no color there, no gender, no skin, no history, no time, no right, no wrong, no better, no best, and certainly no politics. It is a place of pure love. It is our common home, and we all return to it someday. So it is our soul's mission to learn love. Remember that we spring from love and hold your loved ones close. When you trust your life to Creator and become willing to take the next indicated step, all matter of miracles become possible. I remain in slack-jawed wonder at the richness of my life. There's so much here. And I find it interesting that I opened up talking about, I don't want to just like name what's happening out there. And we all know what's happening out there right now. And this gentleman talks about love and how there's certainly no politics in that. So thank you, Richard. I definitely can't wait to hear what my guest thinks of this poem. So I'm going to introduce my guest. A beautiful woman. Her laugh is infectious, very grounded, but also a risk taker. I've known her for a long time because she's my auntie. And I have fond memories of her and all my other aunts. I always feel like she's the one who's like very centered, like I feel like sometimes she's like the mediator with whatever happens with family. And she lived with me and my family for a little bit when I was a rambunctious high schooler. I want to have you all meet my beautiful, loving, charming, grounded earth mother, Auntie. Her name is Claudia Oldman. Claudia, bring your voice in.
Yate, Benecha, and all over the world I hear. Oh, Shay, my name is Claudia Oldman. I am a Navajo. I'm originally from Red Mesa, Arizona. and currently living in Tucson, Arizona for about almost 30 years or maybe 30 years now. So I do go back and forth to the res and reconnect myself. So, siya Claudia Oldman yin siya. Yisna shande Tsatlachit Hazkande on the Navajo reservation. Hashlishnin shlobet ahne bashishchin. Na kaidane etashichedo. Ashin etashinale. So, so thank you, Vickie, for inviting me. I know I was supposed to come on like 2 years ago, and things happened.
What happened?
I couldn't make it the last time. But I was really nervous at that time. I was telling you that I don't know if I want to do this. I don't want to be talking on the interview. But when you first told me you wanted to do podcasting a few years back, and I listened to your long message, I was at work and I took a break and I saw your message. And you told me, I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to do the podcast. I remember I was taking a walk during my break and I listened to you. And I thought, really? She's going to do this. And I was so happy for you that you were going to embark on this new journey of podcasting. So I waited for your first interview to see how it works and what you brought of storytelling. So, there were certain podcasts that I listened throughout this whole journey of podcasting. So some of them are very interesting. Some of them I relate to. So I'm proud of you that you're doing this.
Aw, thank you. I'm so glad because I remember the first time when I got the equipment, it was so funny because I'm going to do it, right? And then when the equipment came, I was like, oh shit, I really got to do something now because it was expensive. And anyway, and I remember playing that first year, just playing with it with family. And it's this is like the 5th season, which is crazy. It went by so fast.
Yes, it did.
And this past year, I didn't really do as many because I was in a whirlwind love bubble. I'm just gonna call it out. Too busy being on a motorcycle and traveling and eating bonbons with my love.
You're just being what they call it, a biker's chick.
I'm all getting blushy now. My honey calls it a scooter trash. He goes, "You're a real scooter trash. You're a real scooter trash." Now I'm like, ew. It's so good to have you. I'm so glad that you said yes. And yeah, you're right. It's not just here in the mainland. I check out the stats, and there are people from New Zealand, Australia, sometimes Japan, Italy. And I think it's probably, I don't know, I'm assuming like there are indigenous relatives that maybe are far away from home. They could also be followers, some of the guest speakers' friends and their followers. Yeah. You had introduced yourself in Navajo to us, and for listeners who are not, they're not Navajo, can you break down what you shared with folks?
What I said is I said my name, and Satlachita Hazkana is Red Mesa. Red Mesa is located in the Navajo reservation, northeastern part of Arizona, closer to the Four Corners area. Red Mesa is into Utah too, so we live like maybe 2 miles away from Utah state border. So we live on the Red Mesa, Arizona side, and then we have cousins that live in Red Mesa, Utah side. So it's combined together. So that's on the Navajo reservation. And my clan, my mom we introduce ourselves as we're a matrilineal society, a matrilineal tribe. And so we go with our mom. So my mom was Hashlishni, which means mud clan. And then my dad was Betahni, which means, I'm not really sure how you interpret that in English. They say it's under the arm or something like that, something to do with under the arm. And then my grandpa, which is my mom's dad, who are the Mexican clan. And my mom's dad is originally from the Black Mesa area. So anyway, there's a whole story to that my other sisters know on that story. Then my dad's side, who is my Nolly, my grandpa, he was a Salt clan from the Clapato, New Mexico, but married into my Nala Islam, my grandma at Islas Mas. So anyway, that's how that Salt clan is from the Clapato, New Mexico. Anyway, kinship is complicated and it can make your head spin.
Do you find that a lot of the younger generation, do you think they still honor and self-identifying, but more importantly, like you can't date that clan because you're related? Do you think young people still practice that?
I want to say maybe in different regions of the Navajo Nation, they do. And then maybe certain regions they don't because it is so complex that it almost seems like you're related to everyone, because this is where I don't really understand and I don't remember, even though I've been told many times, like Hashlishni maybe has a combination of different clans that are all related, but they mean the same clan, but they're named different, but they're all related. So that part of it, I just don't understand. And I don't seem to always remember because I'm being told that all the time, but because it's sticking in my head. So I think certain part of the reservation, they do honor that and they go by that. And then certain parts, depending on how they're raised, who their family are, how traditional they are, I think we're kind of losing that. I think that's kind of scary. But I try to tell my son, don't date a girl that's a Hashlishni, because that Hashlishni could be your sister or your aunt. But he's part Hopi, so the other part is easy.
I'm sure the Hopi's the same way, right?
Yes, I'm sure they're the same way too, that he can't date certain clan on his side. Yeah. So just like I'll always remember what JR used to say, your brother. I don't want to marry a Navajo because they're complicated or they're too complex or something like that. Something along those lines.
Oh, he's so funny. Well, it could save you knowing what your clan is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for telling our listeners that. And I know at the very end, you say, after you said your name, where you're from, and your clan, then you say a last statement. What is that last statement? You say it in Navajo, then in English.
What did I say? And that's, I'm just saying that, that's how I acknowledge myself as a woman.
Yeah.
That's kind of basically what I said.
I always think that's beautiful, that last part, because I think it's very powerful when you say who you are, where you're from. And I know all those clans have a whole nother story. We're not going to go there because that will probably take several podcasts. And then you beautifully frame it at the end. All of this makes me the woman that I am today. That's how I show up. So I just think that part's beautiful. So thank you again for coming and breaking that down for folks. What did you think of the poem?
You know, when you started reading that poem, literally the first person that popped in my head was my dad. Our dad, Jim Oldman, the late Jim Oldman. He had those characteristics. His love for no matter what walks of life, what color you are, he honored that. That's who I recognize, or that's who popped in my head when I started hearing it. Like, that's really my dad, our dad, your Nalesky, your grandpa. That's who he was. He had love for all people, all color, all gender. And that was just him. I was just like, oh my gosh. And politics, he was really into politics, but he never really held hatred towards certain people, all people. And all he showed was love. That's who I thought of.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nolly Jim was a simple, quiet man, and his silence, though, was so powerful. I don't know. It's like there are very few people that I know that are like really quiet, but their presence in the space is like, they're wise, and that they have a lot to say, and they will only say things when they feel like it's the right time, and sometimes they don't say anything at all,
Yeah.
And he was I would say like the Renaissance man. He did a little bit of everything, and yeah.
So that poem, so I think a lot of time we try to practice that, but I do know your Aunt Phyllis carries that on. You see a lot of that in her. Yeah. And I think that's a gift that's good to have.
We're sending you love, Auntie Philly. You were the middle child, weren't you? I mean, like, I'm trying to think of the aunties, and you were kind of in the middle.
I was towards the end, the last third.
How many is in the whole family?
So there's 10 of us, 7 girls and 3 boys. And then we have 2 half-sisters from my dad's. So altogether, 12.
What do you think? What do you think the benefits are coming from a large family?
Oh boy. So I think coming from a large family, there's generation gap, because the older generation, they have a different upbringing and they have a different teaching. We all had the same teaching, but I think it's how we interpret and how we grew up. But the younger generation, I know the last 4 of us, my dad really instilled education in us. Maybe that's what he said to the older siblings too. I don't know. But I know, I think that's where sometimes there's that gap. Because that's how he told us, you need to get a good education. If you cannot if you're not into education, get a good job. But you also need to leave the reservation. Reservation life is hard. Mm-hmm. There's no job. There's kind of like, you can't move forward here. So you need to move off the reservation, go live elsewhere and compete with white people. you need to compete with them. You're as good as them. You can get a good education. You can get a good job. You'll be as good as them. Here, we just live day to day. We have sheep, but you're really kind of just stuck here. But once you succeed in this outside world, you need to come back. Build a home, because this is where your roots are. Come home, build a home, and live here, because you've already experienced the outside world. But you need to come back and live your life. You cannot forget your culture. You cannot forget your language. You need to remember where you came from. That's what he instilled in us. So I think that's where we're at, us, the younger ones. But I'm pretty sure the older ones, they had that same teaching, because Inez went to LA, your dad went to Ohio, Philly lived in Albuquerque. So I'm pretty sure they got the same teaching similar to ours. But I feel like us who were pushed out the door, you graduated, you go live your life. Don't be living here at home. That's what it feels like. Yeah. So then when we come home, we get together. Sometimes we have disagreements as a family, because we're all thinking different. We have different perspective on certain things. And yes, we'll have our disagreement. But I'm hoping that those disagreements doesn't pull us apart. And I'm hoping that keeps us together and to stay stronger. And I always tell my sister that we are a strong family when we need to be together and to do things. We work very well together. We plan very well together. We get together and we rise up and we can make it happen. And we make things happen. That's what I wish for. And it does happen at times, most of the time, when we need to get together and do something like ceremony or just a family event that needs to take place.
Is all of your biblical cords in Red Mesa near a horse corral?
Jeanette at the sheep corral.
Sheep corral. Jeanette means they say. So in our way, you're supposed to bury the umbilical cord
at the sheep corral. So you can be sheep herders. I always herded sheep every summer. It's just like, after a while, I told myself, I'm never going to herd sheep again after I leave, because this is all I did.
Have you since?
Go and gather up the sheep when we go home and take them back in, but I'm not going to stand out there and herd.
So you do low-key herding sheep. Well, you went to boarding school, didn't you? Mm-hmm. At what age?
At 6 years old.
Oh, you were little still.
Yeah. I went to Tisnaspas boarding school. In other words, it's called Tisnaspas. I'll remember, this is a story that I always tell everybody. My first day when I first got dropped off at the dorm, Mom and Dad dropped me off. My clothes was in a bag, in a paper sack bag. I got dropped off. They marked all my clothes. I was assigned a number. And then they dropped me off and they left. And I was there. And I was told to go into the living room, which they used to call it rumpus room. I don't know why. Whatever rumpus room was, but it was a living room. So I went in there and I sat on the couch. Another young girl was checked in. Her name was Veronica. I'm not going to mention her last name. Her name was Veronica. I didn't cry. I just sat on the couch and like, oh, this is new. I kind of like it. So I sat on the couch. I just sat there, and then the new girl came in, and she was just crying and crying, and she sat by me, and she just cried and cried. And her dad left, and she cried and she cried. But for me, it was like, oh, I think I'm going to like this. And I love boarding school. And I tell people, I think I was my experience was at the tail end of boarding school trauma. So I didn't really have a lot of trauma. I just had a lot of fun. And their education, this is what we were just discussing last night. Their education system was good. We did a lot of outdoors activities on weekends. The only time that I got in trouble was when I was 6 years old. We went to class, we went back, had lunch, we went back to the dorm, and we have to take a nap. Have to. Well, this chica that goes against all rules, she would lie on her bed and just fiddle around and play around, jump on the bed and do whatever she wants to do so I wouldn't sleep. And comes the matriarch, and it was a guy, comes the matriarch, hits me with a ruler and tells me to settle down and take a nap, and literally he hit my butt. And it hurt, but I didn't cry. I was just like, oops. So that was the only time that I remember that I got hit. After that, yes, I just laid still. I wasn't jumping up and down and being rambunctious. Most of the time, I kept to myself. I played with kids and did whatever. That was my good experience with the boarding school. And to this day, the young girl, Veronica, we're still friends.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so cute. That's a long friendship, like knowing somebody that long.
Yeah. If I see her, I don't know if she'll remember me, but all through high school, we stayed in contact. Even after high school, ran into her a couple of times, and we still chat. But then later, I come to find out that she's related on my dad's side. Like, oh. And this is a story that I always tell too. The guy that hit me with that ruler, I saw him at a peyote meeting.
Oh, no.
I saw him and I thought, that's the guy that hit me. I'm just kidding.
You should have told him that story. Does he remember? He's got to remember.
He's got to remember me. Come to find out that they're all related to my dad's side of the family. And like, oh my God, I remember him. I thought, like, that's the girl that was just always naughty.
That is so funny.
That's my boarding school days. I had good friendships from my boarding school days. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you just naming the tail end of boarding school trauma, because I know my mom's boarding school stories were not pleasant. They were very traumatic. And I asked my dad, and he was like in the middle. I think he was more like leaning towards your end of like, he's like, I liked it. And I didn't have to hurt sheep, and I didn't smell like sheep anymore. You know, I remember him saying that, like, I had 3 meals a day, clean clothes. And it sounded like he liked it more than you know, what others may have experienced. I hear stories from all over, and majority of the time, I think I hear a lot of the trauma part of it. And I've heard good stories too, that people really appreciate the experience in the school. So speaking of stories and wanting to talk about our guests that we had this past year, we had, I think I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 podcasts this past year. One was a part 1, part 2. But I would love for you to tee us up and tell us, what did you take away? We don't have to go in order, but just who you want to start off with and talk about what it reminded you of. And I'm sure it'll evoke things that you relate to. So I'm going to have you tee us up first.
I think the first one that I read, I just want to ask you something first. This Matisse woman, did you ever get to meet her? I know you guys were going to meet up.
It was during Fashion Week, and it was busy, and we didn't get to meet. We stay in contact. We're friends, but I didn't get to have tea with her. Oh, I did go there. I was hoping that I would see her, and didn't. I text her, and we're like, okay, and then it didn't happen, but I hope it happens. I think it will at some point. She'll probably be here during Indian Market, because if they ask her to be a model again, she'll probably be there, but she's blowing up. Like, she's all over. I see her on the runway just about everywhere. Yeah, she's doing really good.
Good. Oh, she had a lot of energy. Yeah, I think with her, what really stood out to me was when she said, free on the land, where her upbringing, like, you're just free doing whatever you want to do. It also reminded me of my own childhood, that we're living in open space and we're just free and do whatever we want to do. So that really stood out for me. The other one was when she talked about being kind and to forgive yourself. Mm-hmm. So I went back and I really had to think about, what do they mean by to forgive yourself? So I had to have a chat with Kathy, Tata. Like, what do they mean when they say forgive yourself? So finally I came to my own conclusion, and then she told me what her thoughts were. So like, okay, I think I know what they mean by that. And then listening to her again, I had to listen to her twice before, like, okay, I know what it means.
I would love to hear your interpretation of what you arrived to.
So like my mom and I didn't have a good relationship. And I always blame myself for why am I not being a good daughter? Why am I not the daughter that she wants me to be? And I blame myself for all of that. And why does she treat me like this? And why do I treat her like that? And why does she say the things she says to me? It took me all my life to finally figure out what she meant and what she was saying to me and what she was doing to me, to really see it at the end. Instead of dwelling on why, that's where I had to tell myself. I had to, I guess, forgive myself for feeling and thinking the things that I was thinking about my mom. Mm-hmm. So I felt like once I let that forgiveness to myself, let it go and forgive myself, then I had a good relationship with my mom. So that then dawned on me. I don't know if that makes sense, but I am trying to get across what I'm trying to say. When I listened to that a couple of times and had a discussion with Tata, oh, okay. So that's what happened. So at the end of her life, I was fine. And I don't want to live with the guilt for the rest of my life if I didn't forgive myself for thinking what my mom was saying to me or doing to me, or I mean, that's how I interpret that, along with other issues that I had to figure out. It's not really you. There is a lesson within that to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of like something that I had to sit down and really think about.
I love that you really pulled one piece of it and really got curious. Like, what does that really mean? And arrive at a place where it is really impactful and healing. And also a reminder about how we move forward, that there are certain things we do have to forgive ourselves for. Because it's so easy to, when we listen to these stories, it's so easy to miss things or think we understand certain pieces and then we don't. And then we go back and like, oh, how did I miss that? Because when I re-listen to them, I hear things differently. So I appreciate that. What attracted me to her was because she was always at all these petroglyphs. I'm like, where are all these places? Because she doesn't really name them, but they're from all over. And it made me think about you, my aunties, because in our way, you're not supposed to go to places or ruins. And I remember one time I asked you guys, I'm like, I see you guys go over there. I thought we're not supposed to go there. And you guys are like, well, we're rule breakers. And we go, but we smudge afterwards. I'm like, okay, well, if my aunties are doing it, I'm going to do it.
Right.
But I appreciate her educating the public about going to those places. And I couldn't believe that she was saying people were extracting. And I also appreciated how much she knew about her history in the timeline, what they did. But I guess that would be normal. Like I could talk about my parents and my grandparents, but I really just appreciate how much she really dove into her ancestors and talked about that.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. She did have a lot of history to share.
And it's so interesting when she had shared what she went through growing up, because she was teased. I hear that there are people that I know who are just like, oh, they're beautiful physically. They're just so beautiful that they get bullied a lot. So, yeah, she had a lot to say. When I re-listened to the podcast, I noticed she had a lot of energy and I loved her laugh. She would be laughing. Yeah, she was very, very bubbly and she had a lot to say.
Yeah, when I listened to her, she's like, oh my gosh, she has a lot of energy. So, because I can be like that too, but I had to like really calm myself down and then re-listen to her a few weeks later. Like, okay, now I feel, because I was on the bandwagon with her being all hyped up. It's like, I can't be hyped up with her or else I'm not going anywhere.
Well, I'll tell you, she was the reason why I bought a fanny pack when I asked her some questions, and I couldn't believe she had a fanny pack. And then I was at Target one day and I was like, I'm going to get me a fanny pack. And now I love the fanny pack. I'm like a fanny pack person because of her fashion tip that she uses. So,
yeah, I used to own a fanny pack. I don't know what happened to it. Yes, when she said that, I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's coming back.
Yeah.
The other guests that I enjoyed them all. I feel like they all offered something. Is my other fellow podcaster, Juan. He's the one who has the Burn the Wagon podcast. Oh, yeah. And I really loved his story because he's so passionate about having folks understand how we need to rise up in different ways, to be an advocate for our people, to decolonize our mindset. And I love how he talked about himself, about male toxicity. And it's true. Like, I feel like we grew up in a society where it's telling men that they can't feel, telling men that they can't cry, telling men that they don't have to carry it all and that they have to be macho, and that he was like, no, he was like pushing against that. And I really, really appreciated that. I really feel like more men need to do a lot of healing. I really feel like our men are in they're not forgiving themselves. Speaking of not forgiving, they feel like they're not in that place. And I hope that more men start to go on that pathway. And anyway, I just appreciated him, and his spirit is so genuine. He's like the real thing. I hope to meet him one day. I love that he's going back into the practice of his culture of like dancing and learning music, and he's taken out alcoholism and out of his life. And I feel like when you're a strong spiritual person, you can't have that in your life. I respect him and appreciate him sharing his struggle and how he's removed that and how something new has come into his life, and that's the spiritual practice and meeting amazing people. That's one thing I love about the podcast. Him and I were talking about, it's like afterwards we're talking like how many people we met, like I wouldn't have met if I didn't do this, you know. I'd love to hear what you took away from him.
Me too. That really stood out is the men. The men, our native men, do need a lot of healing. And oftentimes that I think that's what they think, that men are not supposed to cry. Men are supposed to be strong, but that's not true. They need to forgive themselves. They need to forgive their parents or however they're raised. They need to cry because that's how you release a lot of the emotion, a lot of whatever you're feeling. But yeah, so that, yes, me too. That really stood out for me. And I'm like, oh, I'm glad somebody's talking about that. Because really, that's what we need, a lot of healing for our men. Our young men, our older men, they need a lot of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Who do you want to bring up next?
The other one, what's that? Cartoonist, Jack Costin. I was always curious about him. How did he get into writing cartoons for the Navajo Times? Mm-hmm. So when I listened to him, I'm like, oh, so that's how he started. And I liked some of his stories, and I almost felt like I had a lot of connection with him. I think just because of how he was raised. He went to boarding school, some of the ceremonies that he's part of, and I just felt like I had a connection with him in every aspect of his life other than being a cartoonist. Yeah, so that I really enjoyed listening to it. It almost felt like you were listening to an oral story on his.
Yeah, it was a really good interview. I don't like to say interview, I like to say conversation, because I felt like I could see him, but he was at the kitchen. Like I could see him there with his coffee, just like Che status, just drinking his coffee, just talking. And I felt like I was in the room with him, just listening to him tell story. There are a couple of things that I really walked away with him. And one is that this man is like brilliant. Like he's smart. And I love that he says, okay, this is a complex situation that's happening in the community. And how can I educate this complexity into one picture? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, this man is like brilliant. That takes some thinking. That takes quiet time to really think about what would that be. I think for me it was how he was able to put complex situations in one picture and get so many people who are not literate to understand what was happening and make light of it, but also the seriousness of it.
Yeah. And how he upset certain people because he's...
Yeah, because he said something like, if you know who the players are, you know who those cartoon people are. I could have spent more time talking to him. I wanted to come back and talk about Belmont because that's where my mom grew up. Because my grandfather, Joe, he was stationed there. And
Oh,
so my grandma Violet was there, and my mom was a little rugrat. And I'm thinking, God, I bet you they were the same age, you know. I don't think she went to school there, so I think she was younger, but they lived there for a little bit. So I've always want to go over there just to check out what the base looks like if it's still there. But anyway, yeah, he was really a good interview. And his daughters were so sweet. They were all around him. And I didn't even know they were listening when we were recording. But his daughters were from different places and they were all listening. So when we got done, they were like, thank you. That was so sweet. They're all making sure he's all set up with Zoom, kind of like how Charmer was helping you.
yeah. Yeah. Oh,
All right.
sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about Willow. She's the young woman from Oklahoma, and she's really sweet. I feel like she's in the summer part of her life. I appreciated her. The reason why I really wanted her on is because she was talking about how to retrain our brain and how we tend to create stories, and these stories that we're creating in our head are not, half of them are not even true. We don't even know. And we get ourselves all spun up, or we get ourselves all stressed out, and that we have to start retraining our brain and go like a different pathway. And I just appreciated her talking a little bit about her growing up and her struggle with being with a single mom and moving away from her family. Sometimes I feel like we don't think about that and how that impacts people. So I appreciate her sharing that and her passion and excitement about where she wants to go, what she wants to do more of.
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoyed listening to her. She really talked about healing, how to heal. The one thing that she made me really think about was fear of being seen. When she said that, I'm like, what does that mean? How is that? Or am I like that? Am I scared to be seen? So anyway, then I keep listening and listening to her, and I'm like, oh, okay. It reminded me of my own self, where a lot of time I'm really quiet, like in a work atmosphere. Like when I go to work, if there's issues coming up, I'm just being quiet because I don't want to say anything to make somebody upset, and I'm not being seen because I'm just being quiet. And I think that's and I like the fact that she says that's an ongoing healing, and you heal for the rest of your life no matter what happens. You take care of one issue, something else comes up, you take care of that, and then you think you're done, and then you realize there's another issue.
Yeah.
She really opened my eyes on that about my own self. So I'm learning how to speak up where sometimes it may come out wrong and I'm pissing off people or I don't have a filter. And that's where I get myself in trouble. But I'm like, but that's how I'm feeling now. And that's how I feel about this. So a lot of time I try to be myself because that's who I am, and I want people to know that's who I am. And sometimes I'm a risk taker too. Like, okay, let's just do this. Okay, let's see what happens. So she really opened my eyes on that one, and it just stood out, and I thought about it for a few days. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
But it also kind of went back, and I reread that Mystique woman, where she said cycle breaking. Yeah, somehow that all connects to that too, where you need that healthy boundary trauma, how we need to heal from all of that. And we have to heal ourselves for our children, because then the trauma that our parents had, if they don't take care of it, it goes to us. And if we don't take care of it, it goes to our children. So we're the ones that has to break that cycle. So somehow I felt like those two were connected together.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed listening to her. Yeah. And I didn't know that she was very young.
Yeah. She's young. And like I said, she just reminds me of this white light. Like, you know, when you see people in a room and she just exudes lightness.
Yeah.
I can tell she's done her work and she's still doing her work.
Yeah. 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 She was the last one that I listened to because I want to save that. And after that, she kind of calmed me down, and I had to really think about myself and my own surrounding.
I appreciate you lifting that piece, though. I remember her saying about a fear of being seen, because I feel like a lot of us feel that way. Like we all want to be accepted. And I wish that we could feel so good enough that we are accepted for who we truly are and not who we're pretending to be. Yeah. And so I feel like the older we get, the better we get at trying to do that. I think when we're young, and of course, social media doesn't help showing who we are and who we really want to be. And anyway, I appreciate you pointing that out, because I feel like that's something everyone can work on, because I think all of us feel that way. Speaking of being in the limelight, in the public limelight, Lauren Anthony was the other person that I had interviewed. It was like 2.5 hours we were talking. And so it ended up being like a part 1, part 2. And I had Gavin on there.
Yeah.
So tell me what your thoughts were about that conversation.
I kind of saw Lauren, just for Che, as a little brother. I don't have a little brother, but I kind of saw him like the goofy little brother that I may have liked. So that's how I took it. And I really enjoyed how Gavin responded to some of the questions. I'm like, oh, you go, Gavin. So I was quite impressed with Gavin. But just for Che or Lauren, I did not know that he was in this heart metal or metal band.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that he did the red carpet or whatever. I'm like, oh. But what I really liked about him is what he does for his community. I really like what he does for his community, taking care of the elders, people that are in need of woods, which I believe is dying, because back when we were growing up, we all had to haul woods. But it seems like just some of the stuff that he shared, some of the elders, they really need help with hauling woods. So that part of it just really stood out for me, that he does a lot for the community and for our elders and for veterans or whoever's in need of woods. So that really stood out for me. And just his goofy style of anybody that's goofy and respectful, I like. Because I will laugh to whatever they're saying. Yeah, but he's a very humble young man that does a lot for the community. And at the same time, he's into this metal band that I'm just like, how does those two work together? But, it works.
I appreciated getting to know him more. I knew of him, and I think when I really heard about him from that one movie with Adam Sandler, I think is his name. Can't think that's how you say his name. Anyway, I remember that. And another person that I had interviewed a couple of years ago had said, hey, he would be good on your podcast. So then I reached out to him 2 years ago, and he was just really busy. Finally, he reached out. He's like, hey, I'm ready. I'm like, okay. So I was ready to do a Zoom too, but he's like, no, I want to do this in person. So he came to the house, and that was really nice. I was really glad that Gavin got to be a part of that. And I enjoyed his response to Lauren, and also how Lauren was talking to Gavin about specific issues. With Lauren, when I learned about Chish for Chase, I heard about it, but I didn't really know like the origin story. So I appreciated him saying it was an outlet for him to get better, to heal from his addictions. And that's what I see with all these storytellers telling their stories, is that life is not easy and they found their way. And a part of I feel like themes with all these, like healing, there's different forms of healing, loving yourself, knowing who you are. It's interesting too. The other thing that I noticed with a lot of these folks is like nature. Somehow nature comes in. I think even with Jack, I read one of his poems and it was about nature. And Juan, he's in touch with being outside, in being connected and seeing how nature heals them. And I think the other thing that I see as a theme with all of them is like practice. And what I mean by that is, even if it's an art, right? It takes practice to be really good like Jack. With Lauren, his music and his acting, I think he even said he's finally getting casting for lead men. It's taken a while, but he's at this place where people are curious about him. And that takes practice, takes commitment. Overall, I don't know if you noticed that though, as a theme from all of the guests that came on.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Anything else that you want to mention about any of the guests, and anything that you took away from re-listening to some of the stories? And what is your final reflections on all of these folks?
I felt like a lot of them, it was about healing and how they heal, or what they're doing, or where it's headed, or where it needs to go, or where they're at. I'm glad you talk to people about whether it's about their own healing, their own business. Open up a story and have conversations. And then sometimes you as listeners, we also think about some of the stories, or even just to open a business. How does that work? How to heal, how to work with arts. But I felt like I learned a lot from listening to these podcasts. So I'm glad you're doing it.
What other podcasts are you listening to?
Just yours.
Well, I feel so special.
One of my coworkers, she's always listening to podcasts about finances and retirement. And then I'm like, maybe I should try listening to that. But I haven't. But I always listen to yours. You're the only one podcast that I listen to.
I have 5 round questions that I want to ask. But before I do the fire round, thank you for listening. Number one, I appreciate you listening and telling me what it offers you. I would love for you to give words of wisdom to our listeners. What's one thing you would want them to do more or less? What's your call to action? Maybe a wisdom that Nolly Jim offered you that you follow, that you want to give to them.
So my thing that I practice is do not hold a grudge. Holding a grudge is not worth it. It affects you mentally. It affects your stomach. So don't hold a grudge. Yes, the other person may not agree with you. You may not agree with them. They may have said something to you and it hurt your feeling. But don't hold a grudge. Just let it go. That's one thing I practice every day. Sometimes it's a challenge, but I always remember that. Don't hold a grudge, because it's affecting your head, your mind, mentally, emotionally. Don't do that. So that's one thing that I always tell my son. Do not hold a grudge. You treat everybody equally, no matter what they say to you, no matter what they do to you. You learn to just accept it. It bounces off of you and you move along. But don't hold it.
Wise words. What came to my mind is when you do that, we're really just hurting ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then we're carrying this anger, this not good feeling. And it doesn't make you feel good because you're holding a grudge at somebody said something to you that's not necessary to hold on. Just let it go.
That's taken me a while to practice, and now I'm going to put on a Post-it. I try to keep Post-its of things I want to really remember. Like one, I have, what is mine to carry?
Oh.
Yeah. Like, is that really mine to carry? No, that's your job to carry that, So I want to put something about don't hold a grudge. Let it go.
And you do feel good when you don't hold a grudge. But yeah, sometimes I do hold a grudge like for a day or so. Then I tell myself no, because then I'm not feeling well. I'm not feeling good. And I don't want to feel not good.
Well, it's heavy too. When you think about it, like energetically, it's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you all heard it, listeners. Don't hold a grudge. Let it go. And it's not yours to carry.
Yeah.
Great advice. All right, let's do some random questions here. What's one thing you've always wanted to try but haven't yet?
Travel internationally. I really one day would like to go to Turkey.
Turkey?
Yes. Don't ask me why. I love to visit Turkey. I also would love to visit South Korea.
Beautiful. Well, bucket list. Make it happen.
Exactly. When I saw you traveling Europe, I'm like, she can do it. I can do it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I got to catch up with you on that. It was amazing. It definitely opened my eyes. It makes me want to do more traveling for sure. What's one thing you believed as a kid that turned out to be completely false?
Wow. Oh boy. That's a hard question for me to answer. A childhood that I was told.
One thing you believed as a kid that turned out to be completely false.
Let's see. I think we were having some kind of discussion on that this morning or a few weeks ago. You know what? I really have to think about it. I don't know.
Mine was Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy.
Claus and the Tooth Fairy. I will tell you, I never believed in Santa Claus.
You never did?
Even in boarding school, my first year in boarding school, they told us there's going to be a surprise. So we all meet up in the rumpus room, AKA living room, that there's going to be a big quiet guy coming down the chimney in a red suit. And he did. And I'm sitting there like, no, that's not real. That's just a man sitting in that thing. So I never believed in Santa Claus.
Well, your niece is very gullible, and I'm very naive in a lot of things. So, okay, next question. What was the last thing you Googled, if you dare to share?
So we took our cat to the vet, and he's very aggressive, and they gave us some medication to calm him down. I wanted to see what it does to him afterwards. It's something to do. I can't remember the name of the medication that I had to get. That's what I Google. That was just yesterday.
If your personality had a theme song, what would it be?
Staying Alive. My all-time favorite by the Bee Gees. And I'll tell you the story afterwards.
Well, everybody's going to want to know now. They're going to say, what did she say? Okay. This is not a fire round. There's been more sightings and more awareness and like calling out UFOs. You know me. I'm like, I have to ask that.
That sounds like a Vickie story. UFO didn't really fascinate me, but I think the more I hear stories from people, and I believe there is really UFOs. I've never seen it, but I hear stories from back home and then from some of the old coworkers that they shared stories with me. And I'm like, yeah, there's really a UFO.
Do you remember that time all of us, all the aunties were all at the house? Nolly Bessie was sitting in there and I was telling you all about one of my dreams. And then another auntie brought up another story. And then we're just like in this story mode. And then Nolly Bessie said, like she said, that's enough. And they were all kind of looking at each other, all giggling. But she basically said, don't talk about those things, So anyway, do you remember that or no?
Yes. She just broke up the party.
Oh, well, speaking of unidentified, flying objects or whatever they're called now, there's a new name for them. But anyway, you wake up tomorrow morning with a superpower. What is it and how do you use it first?
I'm not going to say anything. That's the first thing in my head. It's not something that everybody wants to know, but I would really like the whole world to get along. I said that to somebody at work about this, and he just laughed in my face. And I'm like, why are you laughing? He goes, that's not realistic. But I'm making it realistic in my head that it happens. Like, don't laugh at me. That's one thing that I wish if I had that superpower, let's all just get along.
I feel like for us to get there, I really feel like we all have to do our own personal healing. When we all do our personal healing and we're really aware, like, oh, I just think I manipulated that person or I got triggered, and we know how to handle and get ourselves in a good place and we're practicing, I feel like it's possible. We're still going to have like bumps and whatnot, and we'll be in a better place of understanding the other person, at least having more compassion for the other person, because we're humans. We're all going to mess up.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible, but it's just going to take a while for everyone to do their own healing.
Yeah. And that's one thing I always tell my son, like, things happen in life and it all depends on how you yourself react to it. How are you going to handle it? That's how it is. So I'm hoping he uses it.
That's all we can do. Yeah. Okay, last question. What is your all-time favorite native dish?
Roast ribs with tortilla.
Oh my God, that sounds so good right now.
That's yeah. I know that's just a Navajo dish. Yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. If you ever meet Claudia Oldman, she wants ribs, roasted ribs on a fire with tortillas. Wants everyone to get along and don't hold a grudge. Thank you so much, Auntie. I appreciate you. I'm so honored that I get to spend a lengthy amount of time with you this morning to chit-chat about these guests and how they have shared their wisdom to help us be better human beings.
It was actually fun. And I wasn't nervous. I was really nervous. But, thank you. Thank you very much, Jack. And I appreciate it that you thought of me.